Stop buying bad SSDs. Let's get you the best SSD for gaming 2025. Welcome back to PC Builder. I'm Jason. One of the biggest mistakes that gamers make is buying the wrong SSD, and they waste tons of money in their budget without increasing their gaming performance. This Best Gaming SSD 2025 buying guide, it's going to get you all the critical info that you need to know to buy the best SSD for gaming in 2025 for PC gaming, as well as consoles and handheld gaming devices. If you get value out of this video, please give it a like so it really helps out, and of course subscribe for more cool PC content. Let's jump into it. In 2025, you basically have 3 gaming storage choices, only one of which is actually correct. Starting off with traditional hard drives, which use mechanical spinning disks. In 2025, these are massively outdated, they have no place in a new gaming PC build, and I want you to just forget they even exist. Then we've got SATA SSDs. These are typically available as a 2.5-inch drive using SATA cables, but they can also come in the M.2 form factor. Now, while they're faster than traditional hard drives, these are also heavily outdated in 2025 unless your PC is very old and only has SATA ports. Then we've got M.2 NVMe SSDs. This is the clear winner for the best gaming SSD in 2025. It's significantly faster than a SATA SSD, and it's similarly priced or even cheaper sometimes. These plug into the M.2 socket on modern PC motherboards as well as laptops. NVMe drives are also now the standard for handheld gaming devices and consoles as well, like the PS5 and Xbox Series X and S, each with unique requirements. So the Xbox Series consoles use a proprietary expansion card, while the PS5 requires NVMe drives with built-in heat sinks on them like this. I'll provide specific product recommendations for all of these devices later in the video. M.2 NVMe SSDs come in different sizes. The most common used for PC gaming and the PS5, it's called Socket 2280. Just means 22 millimeters wide by 80 millimeters long. Handheld gaming devices like the Steam Deck and Asus Rog Ally, those use the shorter Socket 2230 M.2 NVMe drives, which are only 30 millimeters in length, hence the name. While other sizes exist, these are the most common, and that's what I'd recommend. But what about SSD speed? M.2 NVMe's, they use the PCIe interface, and the speeds are broken down into generations. The most common are PCIe Gen 3 and Gen 4 SSDs. For a comparison, a PCIe Gen 3 SSD is up to 6 times faster than a SATA SSD, while PCIe Gen 4 NVMe SSDs are theoretically twice as fast as PCIe Gen 3, and the current fastest drives are PCIe Gen 5, which are twice as fast as PCIe Gen 4. PCIe drives are backwards compatible, so you can plug a Gen 3 drive into a Gen 5 motherboard slot and the other way around. It's just going to run at the slowest rated speed, in this case PCIe Gen 3. Let's talk about TLC versus QLC. What am I talking about? Well, today, 2 types of NVMe SSDs are most common based on how much data they can store per unit of memory. So triple level cells, or TLC drives, they store 3 bits of data per cell, while the cheaper but slightly slower quad level cell, or QLC drives, write 4 bits of data per cell. For gaming in 2025, both TLC and QLC drives, they perform similarly, and they can easily last many years beyond their warranties. Now, to speed up writing to the SSD, NVMe drives use a cache system, which temporarily stores files on a limited size but faster memory. Those files are then transferred from the fast memory to the slower long-term memory cells. Caching speeds up the writing process as long as the file size does not exceed the size of the cache. Now, in 2025, there are 3 types of cache. An HMB, or host memory buffer process, that borrows a small portion of your PC's RAM, a single level cell, or SLC cache, that uses faster SSD cells, and a DRAM cache, which is the fastest, using an onboard RAM built directly into the SSD. Cache only affects write speeds, not game loading or reading speeds, so most gamers are going to find that modern SLC or HMB drives, those are perfectly sufficient for gaming. If you do professional workloads that involve heavy file transfers, a DRAM cache SSD will be beneficial, but it's also going to be a little bit more expensive. Many NVMe SSDs now have 2 versions, one with a built-in metal heatsink and one without. So which one should you get? Well, for PS5, because it's a cramped environment without much airflow, Sony recommends that you use an NVMe SSD with a built-in heatsink. For PC gaming, on the other hand, I generally recommend that you do not buy an NVMe SSD with a built-in heatsink. First, most of the affordable Gen 3 and Gen 4 NVMe SSDs that I recommend, they don't get hot enough in a roomier environment of a PC to need a heatsink. Second, many motherboards come with their own built-in heatsinks, which aren't going to fit an SSD with a built-in heatsink on its own. And third, manufacturers can claim that if you remove the built-in heatsink, then it voids your warranty. Note that some drives, like the Team Group Cardea A440, come with a removable heatsink. If you're wondering if you should remove the sticker on the drive, the answer is no, because it usually is made out of a special material to help distribute the heat from the hotter controller chip to the NAND storage chips that need to be at least warm to operate at peak capacity. How much storage do you need for gaming in 2025? Well, for budget PC gaming builds in 2025, I'm upping my minimum storage capacity to 1 terabyte. Games have just gotten so big, prices for NVMe SSDs have gotten so much cheaper, it's just a no-brainer right now. For mid-range PC builds, you should really consider 2 terabyte SSDs if you can, and for high-end PC builds, you certainly can look at 4 terabytes as well. And it's not 2015 anymore, you do not need a separate boot and storage drive. A single high-capacity drive is absolutely fine unless you do heavy professional work, then you might get several drives instead. Now, warning for you SSD upgraders out there, if you are upgrading from a SATA hard drive or a SATA SSD to an NVMe SSD, don't make the mistake of trying to clone your old drive to the NVMe. It can be a problematic process. If this is your boot drive, I recommend a clean Windows install on the NVMe, then use a data migration tool to move everything over from the old SATA drives. Let's talk about gaming performance. Does a faster NVMe SSD give you more FPS in PC gaming? For years, we've been told that in the future, games using direct storage technologies are going to revolutionize gaming and get us tons more FPS. But honestly, it just hasn't worked out that way. Repeated testing by multiple outlets shows that there is absolutely zero, and I mean zero, FPS benefit using anything faster than even a SATA SSD. And that includes testing in games using direct storage technology. But what about loading times? Certainly that's improved by using a faster drive, right? Wrong. Well, loading times make a massive improvement when moving from an old school hard drive to a SATA SSD. That's essentially where the performance increase ends. Gen 3, Gen 4, and even Gen 5 NVMe SSDs, they only improve loading times over SATA SSDs by a couple of seconds at most. For you PS5 console owners, Sony does recommend at least a PCIe Gen 4 NVMe SSD. So what's the best gaming SSD for your money? Well, prices for Gen 3 and Gen 4 NVMe SSDs, they are again approaching their historic low prices. At the time of filming, you can get a Gen 3 or Gen 4 1 terabyte NVMe SSD for as low as $52 in the US. And the more you buy, the more you save. 2 terabyte Gen 3 and Gen 4 NVMe drives are just $94. That's 10% cheaper per terabyte, and it's the best price per terabyte of any capacity. 4 terabyte Gen 3 and Gen 4 drives, which last year were the best value, are still competitive, starting around $200. 8 terabyte drives exist, but they're still silly price, and they start around $630 US. And I do not recommend Gen 5 NVMe SSDs, both because they run ridiculously hot and they provide no gaming performance benefit, but most of all, they are twice as costly as a Gen 3 or Gen 4 NVMe SSD for the same capacity. If you want to spend more money, my recommendation, invest in a better CPU, GPU, motherboard, cooler, literally anything else. Heck, just double the amount of storage and go Gen 3 or Gen 4. Let's jump into specific product recommendations for best gaming SSD 2025. Now, everything's gonna be linked down in the video description. We're gonna go through those links on a regular basis. If a new deal pops up, we'll put it in there. So check out those links for pricing and availability in your region. We also have build guides linked down there for specific CPUs. We've got our best CPU GPU combo in 2025 and a lot of other helpful videos that you can check out. What do you do if you don't have any M.2 slots? You get a card like this. This is an M.2 NVMe PCIe add-in card. So you basically take your M.2 NVMe, you plug it in this, and you plug this into your motherboard. Now this is a by 4. That means the connector here is a by 4 size. It has 4 PCIe lanes on it. That's how many you want per NVMe SSD on there, and you can actually plug this into a larger slot if you want. I would not obviously plug into the top slot that's meant for your graphics card, but for $10, it's insanely cheap to add an M.2 NVMe to any PC with PCIe 3.0 or faster. If you don't have any add-in slots left on your PC, or your PC is older than that, only PCIe Gen 2, then you can add an SSD that's a SATA SSD. This is the one I would recommend, the Team Group T-Force Vulcan. This is an SLC cache on it, which is 2 thumbs up, and it's a TLC drive. So it's as fast as you're gonna get for a SATA SSD out there. $49 for 1 TB. Again, about the same price as an NVMe SSD. So don't get this if you can have an M.2 SSD, but if you can't, then grab this instead. Let's jump into the best budget SSD for gaming in 2025. I'm going to give you a couple different models here. And remember, these are going to use either SLC or host memory buffer processes. Some of them are going to use both of those. These are not DRAM drives. We're going to get to DRAM later in the video. But these are going to be ultra cheap. And again, these drives are going to satisfy most gamers out there, especially in the budget up to the mid-range, even the higher mid-range categories out there. How much are you looking to spend? You're looking to spend about $50 up to $60 at most, $60 at most for 1 TB with, again, price savings when we get to 2 TB out there. A lot of these drives, because they are more budget, don't necessarily have 4 TB models. Let's start off with the cheapest right now, a brand that is really trying hard to break in, which is Clev. They're a relatively new brand. They're basically been created by a major semiconductor manufacturer out there who normally sells these chips, but they also want to have their own brand, and that's the Clev Crash C910. Now, this is $51 for 1 TB, is a Gen 4 NVMe SSD, and it uses both SLC and host memory buffer processes on it for caching. So 2 thumbs up there. Relatively fast in all of the kind of crystal disk mark and all those kind of things for this budget category in it. And I really like it at $51. The 2 TB is $92. Again, you're getting that savings at 2 TB. Another great drive is the Western Digital SN580 Blue out there now. It comes in 1 TB and 2 TB. Now, the good thing about this drive, it's PCIe Gen 4. It's kind of a big improvement over the previous generation, the SN570, in that it's got a massive, an absolutely massive SLC cache out there. And if you're somebody who does tons and tons of file copies for whatever reason, and you want a more budget drive, this is actually a really good performer. The other great thing about Western Digital is they have a relatively global reach. So I know this drive is available in tons and tons of markets out there. So even when it's not the best price one in the US, and they do just trade places depending on sales all the time, so you definitely have to check those links in the description, see what's on sale right now, that this will be available in most markets at a pretty good price. Another great DRAM-less budget NVMe SSD out there for gamers, Silicon Power UD90. Now this comes in 1 TB, 2 TB, and even this one does come in 4 TB variants as well. 1 TB is $56, 2 TB just under $100, $98 right now, and 4 TB a shade over $200, $208 right now. So pretty good value drive out there. It's not the highest performer, the Western Digital SN580 that we just looked at. A little bit better if you're massively invested in right performance out there, but for most gamers out there, this is a great drive to pick up. Let's jump over to Team Group. Now, they've largely looks like done away with like the MP33, MP44 lineup. They're phasing those out in favor of their new branding, which is the G50. This has been a super popular drive, by the way, since they introduced this thing. It's a DRAM-less drive, so it's SLC caching on it. Relatively fast, PCIe Gen 4, and again, been super popular since it came out. Its DRAM version, which is the G70 Pro, completely sold out to the point where I'm not even going to include it in this video. I'll leave it linked down in the video description. You can see if it comes back in stock, but it hasn't for a couple months. This, however, it's been solidly in stock and it's been one of the more popular drives out there. I do have some drives out there that we've recommended in the past, seem to have fallen out of favor in price-wise. The Silicon Power A60 drive we often recommended, not the best performer of any of the ones we just looked at, $53. But if this one gets $10, $15 cheaper than the other drives as it had been in the past, I would definitely pick it up. Let's jump to the best SSD for gaming 2025. Now this is for PC gaming, although this one you can use for PS5. But generally what we're looking for here is DRAM cache on it. So these are going to be mid-range or higher end builds out there. Because again, budget NVMe SSDs are absolutely fine without DRAM. But if you want pick up DRAM, you want something else snappier out there, I'd look at one of these drives. In terms of price, typically $80 to about $100, although there's a big sale going on as I'm doing this. So you're gonna see some prices that might be a little cheaper. I wouldn't wait around for the big sale because we're talking about $5 or $10 here. But let's start off with the one that's often the cheapest out there. That's the Clev Crash C930. This is 1 TB for $76. Now this one is not on sale. You'll see some others that seem cheaper right now. And that's for the 1 TB. It's got a DRAM cache on it and it comes with this aluminum heatsink. It's fully removable. So you can either not use it with PC and use like your motherboard heatsink instead, or if you have a PS5, you can use this instead. And we'll talk about this more in the PS5 section as well. It comes in 1 terabyte, comes in 2 terabytes for $120, and typically this is one of the better price options out there. Let's jump over to a drive I really like, and it's on insane super sale as I'm filming this right now. It wasn't on an insane super sale 2 days ago when I actually bought this drive for this video. It wasn't on insane sale then. Usually more like $78 up to $80, and then the 2 terabyte version often kind of into $120 to $135 territory. It is faster than the Clev Crash that we just looked at. It's a great drive. It's also got some cool kind of Acer Predator gaming vibe to it. So if you don't end up using it with any kind of heatsink over it, it does look kind of cool. I do know that this drive runs a little hotter, but again, none of these drives are so hot that they need like any kind of active cooling or anything like that. At best, you can put it under a motherboard heatsink and not really worry about it. Overall, this is a great performer. Right now for $66 would be insane. Normally more like 80 bucks. Another great drive is the SK Hynix Platinum P41. Now, SK Hynix is, again, a manufacturer of NAND chips along with a lot of other things, and this is their brand to basically also have an SSD brand out there. So it's pretty good quality out there. $71 right now on, again, insane super sale. Typically more like it's one of the higher priced drives out there. Now, it is also one of the faster drives out there before you get into the really silly stuff like the Samsung 990 Pro. So we will take a look at it in just a second. Right now, $72 for 1 terabyte. Again, more like $90 usually. $129 right now for 2 terabyte. Again, more like $140 normally for it. Even on its normal price, it's well worth the money if you want a more professional kind of prosumer level drive. From Team Group, I basically have kind of 2 recommendations that essentially feel like the same thing. This is the Team Group T-Force Cardea A440. Now there's the A440, there's the Z440, and then there are light versions of both of those that do not have DRAM. So don't get the light versions, just get the regular version here. One of the reasons I like these drives is they come with either you can just use the graphene sticker on it for PC or anything like that, or if you do have a PS5, it does also come with a removable aluminum heatsink. So 2 thumbs up there. $80 right now. Now it's hard to find. I think they're phasing the A440 out here. That's why it's hard to find anything other than 1 terabyte right now for $79. They're phasing it out, it seems like, in favor of a drive that they cannot keep in stock right now, which is the Team Group T-Force G70 Pro. Again, the new G70 is their new branding with these. Seems to be almost an identical drive, basically, except it does lack the aluminum heatsink. If you want to get the aluminum heatsink, you got to spend a little bit more money for a different version of it. That's the difference between the two. That's why I do like the Cardea version a little bit better. Let's jump into some professional drives, because I know some of you out there are just determined to spend all your money on your SSD. Let me give you my top 2 picks, basically. If you're a pro, if you want to do a lot of video editing, if you want to have a multiple drive setup for kind of heavy file writes out there, the ones I would look at, there's 2 drives really. It's the Western Digital Black SN850X. Now, these are super fast read write. They've got great DRAM caches on them. And overall, they're just phenomenal performers. $89 right now. Now, this is kind of on super sale. Still, 90 bucks. That's typically what you pay for 2 terabytes. You're paying for 1 terabyte. You see the price difference here to go up to this professional level drives. You're basically sacrificing an extra terabyte of space in order to get the faster drive, so to speak. That being said, we use these in our production process. They're absolutely phenomenal. The other drive I take a look at is the Samsung 990 Pro, another drive that we do use in our production process here in our video editing PC. Right now, they are on super Amazon special spring sale for $99. They can often be a little bit more expensive. Even though this is a 1 terabyte NVMe SSD, it can often be over $100. That's why I caution you, only people who need this speed should be buying that, and that's not people who just game out there. The 2 terabytes, even steeper than that. But again, if you want the fastest, this is one of them. Let's quickly go through the best SSD for gaming 2025 for handheld devices. So this is like the Steam Deck, the Legion Go, the Asus ROG Ally, those kinds of MSI Claw, all those kinds of handheld gaming devices, I should say, where you want a 2230 socket M.2 NVMe SSD. That means it's only 30 millimeters in length. They're all 22 millimeters wide. So essentially, there's not a lot of performance difference between all these for a handheld gaming device. My advice, just get the cheaper one. Silicon Power UD90. Right now you can get this drive, same as we recommended for the PC, for $69 for that smaller form factor. I like this one quite a bit. If you can't find this one, you don't have that one in your market, Patriot makes one, the Patriot Memory Viper, the VP4000 here. Again, 1 terabyte for $73. Tends to be if you go to 2 terabyte on these drives, it get really expensive. $150 for this drive. $150 for most of the drives out there that are the smaller form factor. Corsair's got the Corsair MP600 Mini. Again, another good performer out there. I wouldn't necessarily grab one over the next. Now, this is probably slightly faster, but again, for those handheld devices, are you ever actually going to realize that speed? Probably not. Finally, one we recommended last year. It's gotten a little bit more expensive. I probably wouldn't buy it for this price, but sometimes does go on sale. That's the Team Group MP44S. Again, I'll leave all these linked down in the video description. My advice, buy the cheapest one. Let's jump to the best gaming SSD for the PS5 and the PS5 Pro in 2025. And honestly, Sony recommends you have an aluminum heatsink. I know some of the companies out there, the SSD companies, saying, oh, their thin graphene stickers are enough for a PS5 or a PS5 Pro. We're just going to go with the aluminum ones. You don't save that much money. I'm going to give you 3 options. We're going to go budget. We're going to go the drive I think everybody should get. And then we're going to go with the stupid expensive one that I think some of you are just going to want to buy. So let's start off with the Lexar NM790. If you're more in a budget, you want to save a couple of dollars. This is a great drive, aluminum heatsink. This does not have DRAM on it. So this is a host memory buffer and SLC cache on it. But for $70 for 1 terabyte, it's a really good performer. And then for 2 terabytes, $135. So you do get that small discount if you do move up to 2 terabytes. The drive I think everybody should pick up out there if you have a PS5 or a PS5 Pro, the Clev Crash C930. 1 terabyte does come with the optional aluminum heatsink that you're going to want to put on if you're going to use a PS5 or a PS5 Pro, or you're going to use this drive for that. $76 is a great price. I know it's not available on markets. That's why I want to keep giving you some more options here. $120 for 2 terabytes. It's really good value. The one I think that's probably going to have global reach is the Western Digital Black SN850X. There is a version of this that they say is specifically designed for the PlayStation. Folks, it's the same drive. Just get whichever one is cheaper right now. That is SN850X. This is the one with the heatsink. This is the one you saw sitting on the desk. It's a great drive. $99. Yes, a little steeper right now, but if you just want to spend whatever it takes and feel like you're getting the best, this is probably it. Let's jump into the best SSD for the Xbox Series X and S in 2025. You don't have a lot of options out there, unfortunately. I don't know why Microsoft didn't opt to go with a standard drive out there. Instead, they went with some proprietary thing, and they seem to be all the same price. So there's not a lot of options out here. I'm just going to go through what they are. There's the Seagate version of this. They call this expansion card. Comes in 1 and 2 terabytes, and they are silly expensive. $149 for 1 terabyte here on the Seagate one. I think the 2 terabyte version of it is even significantly more expensive. You can, of course, get even more storage than that. $219 for 2 terabytes. Totally crazy out there. It's almost like Apple marketing, I'll be quite honest with you. The other one to take a look at is the Western Digital Black 1 terabyte. That's the one that was sitting on the desk here. The C50. Again, it seems like the pricing for these is somehow regulated by Microsoft because they're basically the same price. Just pick up whichever one is cheaper if you do find one on sale. Everything is linked down in the video description. Check that out for the best gaming SSD 2025 deals right now. And of course, if you got value out of this video, please give a like. It really helps out the channel, and subscribe for more cool PC content. And we'll catch you on the next one.